Hello, here today to do a reading for Carrie, who I do not believe I've ever read before. Carrie is a Taurus. So Carrie, I have already picked your significator for you. As you've probably noticed, guys, I'm trying to use the Morgan Greer deck for really for kicks here, just for something different. For whatever reason, I've felt the need to work with this deck over the past few days. Funny story, perhaps. This is actually the deck that I first used when I was teaching myself years ago. So it's kind of nostalgic for me to use it. But anywho, I've already shuffled for your reading, Carrie. Pulled your significator. Used the Queen of Pentacles because being a female Earth sign, Queen of Pentacles best represents that type of personality. Okay. And your question, as I received, was that you've been dealing with chronic fatigue for a number of years, and you also are a mother. And your question was essentially, how can you best deal with your chronic fatigue while also taking care of your daughter? What's the best way for you to go about that? And I was told that you also have been kind of interested or experimenting with, alternative methods of healing, such as Reiki and whatnot. So we'll see what we've got here. It's just going to be a Celtic cross today. So again, I've already shuffled, and overall situation is represented by the Five of Wands. Crossing you is the Three of Wands. Crowning is the Ten of Swords. Rooting is the Page of Swords. In the past, or waning, is the Ace of Cups, and in the future is the Moon. How you see the situation is the Knight of Cups. Environmental factors represented by the Knight of Pentacles. Hopes and fears, Six of Swords. And overall outcome is the Nine of Wands. And on the bottom of the deck, you have the Nine of Cups. Okay. So I'm just going to leave this here. Right off the bat, I see a lot of difficulty in your reading, Carrie. I'm concerned by what you have in terms of swords here, but also the overall situation represented by the Five of Wands tells me that there is conflict at the heart of this situation, and I don't know that it's altogether healthy competition or conflict as the Five of Wands sometimes represents. And that is only because of the influence of the Page of Swords I'm getting at the bottom of your reading here, telling me that you perhaps feel like you've had to be on your guard or something. You've had to become very wary of how you use your resources. The Page of Swords could also represent your daughter. If she is a kind of a free spirit type of person, she's if it does represent your daughter, she's got a very curious mind. She's intellectual. She's very mentally creative, and I think I sense a lot of frustration to an extent, because I know that you very much want to do the right thing here, and I think your priorities, the way you see yourself in the situation, is as the Knight of Cups, and I think that's because you're trying very hard to find that path that is going to be spiritually beneficial for you, but I think also there's a sense of concern for others in that approach. Okay, you have let's see here. Okay, I'm going to go through each thing here just to sort of break this down for us as best as possible. Again, Five of Wands in the center, representing conflict and frustration mostly, and crossing that is the Three of Wands, which sort of summarizes our question. You know, what exactly should you do? And I think you're at a loss as far as what path to take. Now, I am a little troubled by your Crown card. I'm going to wait on that for a second and see what else we've got here. First, grounding you, again, is the Page of Swords, representing, you know, the basis of the situation, what has brought the situation into existence. And the Page of Swords, again, could represent your daughter, because pages do tend to represent young people, particularly women, young girls. But it can also represent a sense on your part of needing to become more physically aware. The Page of Swords is just associated. Sometimes it's associated with cunning and spying and that sort of thing, but I don't get that vibe here. I think that's more. It can also represent just being tactful and trying to become more. I guess, aware of one's surroundings, aware of one's situation, and trying to be, I guess, what's the word I want? Just trying to be cautious in a sense. And I do sense caution, a feeling of caution here from the Page of Swords and the Moon, which we'll get to in a second. In the past, you have the Ace of Cups, which is interesting considering the Nine of Cups on the bottom, which tells me that this reading at its heart is trying to talk about finding something that's what you've always wanted, fulfilling or completing a deep wish of yours for manifesting something that you've always wanted. And I think that goes back to the Knight of Cups as well. I think that there have been times in the past, or particularly a certain time, where you thought you had perhaps found that which you were looking for in terms of true happiness, but it seems that has not quite turned out the way that you had hoped, and that perhaps is because of the physical difficulty that you are dealing with the chronic fatigue. But I get this sense that you're sort of on this quest here with the Knight of Cups over here as far as how you see yourself. The Knight of Cups is kind of this figure that's always in search of the Holy Grail. And it's almost like you are trying to reclaim or rediscover a kind of happiness that you used to have, that is no longer possible, to be frank, because the situation just is not allowing for that right now. Let's see. Again, I'm going to hold off on the Ten of Swords just yet until I get a better feel of everything here. The influence that's going to continue to shape the situation in the immediate future for now is represented by the Moon, which in some ways is kind of telling me that you're not going to really be sure of what it is you want, because I think I get the sense that you are trying hard to, again, recreate a kind of happiness that used to be part of your life and is no longer. And I think the Moon, in a sense, is trying to tell us that as long as you continue to hold on to whatever that idea of happiness is, the more you try to hold on to that, the more lost you're going to remain, if that makes sense. And I think, we can finally talk now about the Ten of Swords, because I think that that's really what the Ten of Swords is getting at. The Ten of Swords, I don't know if you are a tarot reader yourself, Carrie, or anything like that, but the Ten of Swords is considered not a great card. It is considered a card of ruin and destruction. But at the same time, the Ten of Swords, to give you a little background about it, is the Sun in Gemini. And the kind of overarching message of the Ten of Swords is that even when we are at the lowest of our lowest points in life, there is always still a kernel of possibility and a kernel of hope that cannot be destroyed. That hope is not destructible. And that like the phoenix, you can arise from the metaphorical ashes here, to use a cliche. And I think that what it's trying to tell you, as far as your advice is concerned, is not to give in and just give up, which is perhaps one way of looking at it, but I really don't think that's what it's saying. I think it's telling you that the lesson here is not an easy one, and that the lesson here in this situation is to attempt to accept some of this, to accept and make peace with some of this difficulty that you've had to deal with, and to try your best to embrace the fact that you can't live the life that you used to anymore. It's just not. I don't know that it's possible. And I think maybe that's part of where you're getting frustrated with the Five of Wands here. I think that you're in conflict more with yourself than anything else, because I think you're frustrated with the fact that you used to be able to do certain things and now you just can't anymore. And I think that's very frustrating for you, and understandably so. But I think the Ten of Swords is trying to tell you that in this situation, it is okay to let go of those past notions of happiness, that you are able to kind of transform that idea of happiness into something new. And I think that that is really the only direction that is available to you here, because it does not suggest, it really does not, to be very honest with you, there is no other advice here in terms of a process of healing. It suggests to me that there is no real solution to this problem, and I know that that is not easy to hear, but maybe there is, and this is but this is what the reading has decided to share with us today, and it does say that for whatever reason, acceptance of your limitations here is important for you to do, and that in your current condition, it's important for you to not be so hard on yourself and to not push yourself, because I think that I see a lot of fire in your reading, and I think that you are a motivated person and you're used to being a hard worker. If I was going to suggest before that the Knight of Pentacles represents some other person in your life, but I don't know that it necessarily does. I think the Knight of Pentacles really represents here how other people see you, and I think people are used to seeing you as a hardworking person, as someone who is always doing something, usually something practical. You're always trying to get something done. And at this point in your life, that is not really an energy that is as integrated into your life as it perhaps once was, because the Knight of Pentacles is the only Earth card you have, and so its energy is not echoed anywhere else in your life, and the only location that it is being activated is in your environment, in how other people see you or know you or understand you. And, the interesting thing, too, is that the Knight of, perhaps to think about, is the Knight of Pentacles and the Knight of Cups Both of these cards here in this deck are facing the same direction, which is interesting to me and sort of reinforces the idea that the Knight of Pentacles is a representation of you and is not some other person. But I think, the Knight of Pentacles is such a foil to the Knight of Cups. In this situation, you're trying hard to reclaim happiness, to search for some kind of spiritual solution here. But I think the problem is actually a lot more mundane, perhaps, than we realize. You don't have a whole lot of major arcana in your reading. You only have the moon. And other than that, everything else is a minor arcana. And traditionally, we would interpret that as saying that, this is a situation that is not necessarily of tremendous spiritual import. It is not something that involves grand universal forces acting in your life. And it is simply a byproduct of an unfortunate circumstance of worldly living, of living in the flesh. And it is not easy, and it's unfortunate, but it is something that we have to deal with. And I don't know that it's suggesting that we deal with it in a particularly spiritual way. I think it's saying that for the most part, we need to remain practical in this situation and to remain down to earth, because I think we need a little bit more of that energy back in your life. I think you need a little bit more earth here, since it's missing. And I think you need to ground yourself and remain a little grounded, because I see you as pushing yourself really hard because you want to do the right thing. And I think, again, I don't know that it's because you want to do the right thing necessarily for yourself. I think you really want to do the right thing for your daughter, and or just for other people. And just just to continue on here, your hopes and fears, just to keep moving here, your hopes and fears are represented by the Six of Swords. And so, of course, that naturally says that, your biggest hope is that you'll be able to move into an easier period, and move into calmer territory. And, the interesting thing is the Six of Swords is connected to the Ten of Swords and the Page of Swords. Now, I would interpret this as saying that really the best way for you to move on into that sort of calmer waters territory that you really want, I think the best thing for you to do is to let something go here with this Ten of Swords. Letting go of the past, I think, is important here. And, I think that, we could have received the Death card here for your advice card, and it could have meant sort of the same thing, but I think that the Ten of Swords is a little more poignant and a little more physical. I think that there's an aspect of physical pain there that is certainly a part of this, and I think it's saying that to some extent you need to have more sympathy for yourself because of that. Because you are under physical pressure and physical pain, and things are not as easy for you. I think you need to forgive yourself for that and understand that this is not something that necessarily is your fault, is not necessarily something that could have been prevented, and is not necessarily something at the same time that is supposed to ruin your life. I think it's simply supposed to... I get the sense that it's trying to tell you to try to reshape this idea of happiness and turn it into something different and focus on the here and now, instead of the unattainable past. The other interesting thing, perhaps, to consider is that you do have solar influence in this reading, in the form of the Three of Wands, which again is the card saying, is the block for you in this reading, which is the idea of trying to figure out the right choice, the right path, coming up with the right plan of attack for this situation. And the Ten of Swords, which was your advice card, which we've been talking about. And those two ideas, it's saying, are connected on a subtle level here, and both of those are solar influences. And I think if we compare that idea of solarness with the moon, which is your upcoming influence and continuing influence, and I know that the moon does not necessarily represent literally the planet of the moon, but the moon still is called the moon, even though it is technically Pisces. And I think that solar energy of the Ten of Swords and the Three of Wands here does counteract in some ways the influence of the moon. And so I think it's saying that if you continue along this path, and if you continue to search for ways to remanifest the past, you're just going to continue to be stuck in a mire and not really see things for, unfortunately, how they really are. And I think that it is saying that a bit of a reality check is a little necessary, to some extent, and that even though the truth may be harsh and difficult to swallow, it is still the truth, and that there is still a sense of potential healing available to you through accepting that truth. I think that is really the spiritual path that this reading is trying to advocate for you, is to look more at how things really are, and to not allow yourself to dream about what you wish you could reclaim. Because for your own well-being, it is important for you to not push yourself too hard. And I think that this is saying that this doesn't mean that you have to necessarily become a bad parent or anything like that, because I can tell that you're a very caring person, and you are a sensitive person, and you do like to take care of people, and I think you are perhaps the sole provider for your daughter at the moment. I don't know if you're a single mother or something like that. But I think because of that, you feel like you have to make up for the role of both parents. And I think it's saying that you can't really do that. You can only really do what you're physically capable of doing. And I think that it would actually be better for you to try to, in terms of parenting, to try to consolidate your energies more, and instead of trying to do everything, simply do what is important. And I think that that figuring out what is important will come to you if you just listen to your inner intuition. You have the High Priestess down here on the bottom, and following the High Priestess, you have the Three of Swords and the Seven of Swords, and the Tower, which tells me that you are, in some ways, and the Priestess represents the truth, of course, as we were talking about. I think in some ways you're just so frustrated with the truth and the reality of your situation, and you're so hurt by the reality of the situation, emotionally, that perhaps you are choosing to ignore it in some ways, and as a result are actually causing more harm for yourself than good. That's just what I'm getting if I'm to try to weave this all together here. Your overall result, if we continue along this track, if you continue to try to make up for what you've lost, it's going to result in the Nine of Wands, which tells me that you will have the strength to continue all this, but you're just going to make yourself more tired, and I see that as not necessarily being a great thing for you. The Nine of Wands is the moon in Sagittarius, and we were talking before about how this lunar-ish influence here is not what is right for you right now. And I think the Nine of Wands is kind of perpetuating that in the long run. And I don't know if draining your energy is really right for you. I think that this really is telling you to focus on the reality of things. Let's see if there's anything else we've got here. We talked about your air, we talked about fire, and we talked about water, and we talked about earth. Again, just to reiterate, more earth is perhaps required in your life on a daily basis. Perhaps that could represent just taking better care of yourself health-wise, paying more attention to your own bodily needs, and I think also it represents taking things a little more slowly. The amount of fire you have concentrated in this center position here tells me that you in some ways feel like you still have all this energy, but then when you actually try to physically use it, it doesn't work out for you. And so I think perhaps you need to be more patient and more grounded with yourself and allow yourself to do things over a longer period of time. And maybe that's another way for you to think about dealing with this, is to not necessarily totally give up on certain things, but to learn how to do them in a more slow manner, and to be okay with that, and to not get frustrated with yourself because of that, to pace yourself. And I believe that's everything I can pull from this reading here today. There are no other connections or things of that nature that are relevant anyway. Yeah. So I hope that this was somewhat helpful. I hope that you don't find this reading to be discouraging, because I really didn't intend it to be that way. And I don't think that it's trying to be discouraging. I think that it's really trying to just help you, and I think that's really where this reading is coming from. I don't think that it's trying to come from a place of bleakness and despair at all. I think really it's just trying to help you, and if you have any questions, let me know. And if I can answer them, I will try to answer them. If not, so be it. But I do really hope that things do improve for you and that things do get better, and I do wish you the best of luck. I know chronic fatigue is not easy. My grandmother has it, actually, and it is tough to live with. So I do hope that things get better for you. And again, I wish you the best of luck with everything, and I thank you for choosing me as your reader for today. All right. So thank you very much again, and many blessings and all that. Bye-bye.